Hey guys, Jason Duff here from Small Nation, and I'm pleased to be with two very good friends and entrepreneurs from different parts of the country today. First off, I'm with Doug Fath. Doug is author, real estate investor, and a developer from Legacy Capital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And also Michael Simmons. He's a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and researcher from Seminole, with us today from Hopewell, New Jersey. Really excited to have you guys on the video call today.
Yeah, super excited to talk with you.
Awesome. Michael and Doug, they are part of our thought. Text messages are coming in. News continues to evolve. It seems like that's been our lives lately. But both Doug and Michael are part of our thought leadership trust here at Small Nation. And I wanted to, really kind of bring you guys on board and ask for your advice and support, because there's a lot of small business owners and leaders out there that are struggling, just with the information overload. Many of their businesses are closed right now. Many of them are working from home, trying to assess how we can keep people safe, but also once the fog lifts, how we can bring business and community back online. And, I want to share a little bit with the group. We had the chance to meet each other over 10 years ago, kind of through different conferences and events, and have been doing weekly mastermind calls for over 10 years on Sunday afternoons. That has been especially important for me, the concept of masterminding, instead of having one mind around a problem, having many that are around the problem. And I know in our weekly calls, we've created a structure to find ways to support each other, both professionally and personally, and even through some of the darkest times in life. That may be, I know many of us have been through the death of loved ones. We've had businesses that we've celebrated the heights and success of starting new businesses and seeing them be successful. And we've also had some businesses close together. We've had to amend and change and rethink and retool. But just appreciate that you guys have been there for me, and hopefully we can share some of the things that we have worked through and give other entrepreneurs a model that they can start to do in developing their own masterminds as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. So just to kind of jump in, what has it been like since about a week ago when the information about COVID-19 started spreading and impacting your states and your businesses? What's kind of the reality that you're dealing with now, where you're at?
Well, on my end, one thing that's been really fascinating is talking to different people. We have a Facebook group of over 200,000 people, and we did polls, and it's really interesting that people are feeling different, exact opposite ways. So some people are feeling optimistic, some people are in the middle of it and really struggling, and for different reasons. Some people just haven't been impacted. Other people are calm, but because they've already been through the hard part. For me, I've always been an entrepreneur since I was 16 and worked from home. And so there hasn't been as much of a difference that way. We have a digital education company. So there's been, our business has about been the same since it happened.
And Doug, how about you?
Yeah, so a lot's evolved over the last couple weeks. So initially, two businesses I run and operate are the lending company, where we lend money to other investors and developers. And then I have my own development company where we have construction projects. So, 2 weeks ago, it was, hey, something to be monitored. To last week, we shut down the office and had everyone work remotely. To now construction in Pennsylvania, they're limiting kind of what can be done and only emergency or, forget the term, life-sustaining or kind of emergency type construction. So it's a situation that day by day is getting updated. And as more updates come about, things continue to change. So it's definitely a fluid situation. And I think, as Michael said, as we've gone through these phases in the last 2 weeks, and I believe we have more phases to go through, but it's been a bit of both, a bit of trying to understand these harsh new realities, and at the same time, what are some of the opportunities that are arising from this?
Yeah, and I would say I've gone through two stages from an information perspective. One is every day I'm kind of in some level of shock that this is happening and having to make my whole reality. And okay, what do I do? Do I buy food, and how do we plan to homeschool and things like that? And then I feel like there came a point of stability where each new day, there's not as much news that's changing the behaviors. But in that time, I've been thinking a lot about just trying to create better mental models of what are the different scenarios that could happen, the best and the worst, how long could it take, and what are the second and third order consequences. You know, the obvious things that are happening right now are businesses are being shut down, and normally there's 2 million kids being homeschooled in the US. Now there's hundreds of millions in the world. So those are the first order consequences. But when you play those out, there could be surprising things that you wouldn't think about. One of the more popular ones that people talk about is, there's going to be a bunch of kids in 9 months, to more the sadder side that there's been more arguments and things at home as kids are getting on the nerves of parents, or, and so on.
Yesterday we interviewed a CPA, Jacob Schrader from Ascend Consulting, and one of the things that he is working on to help small businesses is kind of having the frame of being able to put things on pause. I think that we're wired to get up every day to see what we can do to create, what we can do to, help our employees, help our customers. And, a lot of what I think has been shock as I've been working through this process is Ohio was one of the first states in the country to send university students home, then our school students home. And then we started mandating the closure of restaurants that moved into gyms, yoga studios, and now pretty much all non-essential businesses are closed. So many folks are leaving and going home, having to, turn that closed sign on and unsure of when they're going to open back up, and not only unsure when they're going to open back up, but how are they going to have the money to do so? Do you have any kind of advice, as people put things on pause, kind of the mental framework of what may be helpful to them for what they can do during this downtime?
Well, I think high level, the most important thing to remember, which is difficult to remember when you're in it, but this too shall pass. And I understand that's tough to hear, especially when you've had to either close down a business or you can no longer report to work. But I think that's an important mentality to have as you're kind of diving into some of this time. I think is really important. In terms of for me and for us personally, we haven't yet experienced that yet. I think it's very likely that we'll have to experience that sort of in the next week or two. But for us, we haven't really entered that phase because we're still closing loans. We're actually getting a lot more business right now and calls because so many lenders have just flat out stopped lending. They said, hey, we're not doing any new loans. We're only looking at our existing portfolio. And so we've been getting a lot of calls that have led to new deals. But as things continue to shut down, that may stop. And for us at some point, we're going to potentially be in that same situation and going to have to figure some of that stuff out myself. But I haven't experienced that yet. So I don't want to speak if I'm not speaking from experience. So.
One thing is in our mental model club each month, we have about 1,500 members in there. And each month we talk about a new mental model. This month we're talking about the idea of post-traumatic growth, and the idea that a lot of times we think about stress as universally bad, and chronic stress or stress that's too severe is not good. But stress can also be the thing that causes us to grow. Obviously with physically, with lifting weights, but there's also been a lot of research on it psychologically as well. And I think some of the big thing there are, the challenge of it is there's the emotional distress that comes from it, and we all have to deal with that. And it's the skill and the practice and the difficulty of emotional regulation. And then on the other side, the goals that we have, the beliefs about what was going to happen. It's mourning for that loss, but then it takes time to then reconstruct a new version of goals or beliefs that you're excited about, and then we had a story, an identity about ourselves, and trying to rebuild a new one that's better fit for what's actually happening right now. And all of that takes time and effort, and it doesn't just happen automatically.
I really like that, Michael. One thing that, we were talking about on our earlier video call was how often we get stuck spending so much time working in our businesses that we don't have the time to work on our businesses. And, right now, the speed of many of our boutiques, our retail stores, of being able to implement online sales, or you just even the speed of the restaurants when dine-in was closed, the number of them that have been coming up with these creative menus, deploying them online, creating delivery options, to-go options, safe packaging. The innovation that's out there for survival is really impressive. And I think that speaks to that idea that stress, can be that motivator to do so. When it comes to thinking about industries that are going to completely change, and Michael, I think I'd like to ask you, you have been for most of your life passionate about entrepreneurship education and education in general and new ways to deliver education. What do you kind of see with many people working from home, homeschooling? What are some trends that are probably here to stay and ways and things that we should be focusing on related to education?
Yeah, well, I don't know how many people were homeschooling globally before, but as I said, it was 2 million in the US, and now it's hundreds of millions. So you think it's just crazy to think about that a market is 100xing overnight. And what does that mean as parents are trying to figure things out? And that schools could be closed, not just for the rest of the school year, but maybe even next fall. We just don't know. Maybe summer camps will be home. So, there's a lot of interesting models that are emerging of software being used to, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter say that they're homeschooling a group of kids and they're looking for guest speakers to come in. So if you're listening to this, you could be a guest speaker and just sharing your experiences and help students learn. And I've also just been hearing just from a lot of parents that they're learning more about how their kids learn and what it's like. And we've just been seeing in some areas, like we're seeing that the schools are awesome. And then other areas where, okay, there could be more opportunity for challenging for children as well. And so from an entrepreneur's perspective, there could be an opportunity if you're really gifted at working with children and able to engage them. There's a huge opportunities for those entrepreneurs. And I also look at it in the adult market. A lot of people purchase learning when they're in some sort of reinvention process. And so right now, a lot of us are thrown into that world of uncertainty and reinvention. And to the extent that you can have some of the knowledge that you've acquired could be helpful for someone's reinvention process. There's a lot of need for that right now.
Doug, any thoughts about other industries that you see emerging or changing kind of out of this crisis right now?
Well, I think it's important to whatever industry you're in or you're looking at is to start to think through what potentially is the impact going to be. I know you mentioned sort of the restaurant business and things like that. I would imagine once this passes, people are still going to go back and eat out, right? Like that's not an industry that's going away. But there's a lot of chatter in like the commercial real estate space, in particular the office space, with now pretty much almost the entire workforce working from home. How many of those businesses are no longer going to go back to an office setting or severely cut down because they realize, hey, we don't need to have that overhead. We've been working from home for the last however long this goes, and that's a feasible option. And so, I think it's important to get out ahead and think through some of that stuff. So if you do have some downtime now or you can't work, you can get out ahead of that thinking and planning so that when things do get back to normal and, probably the new normal, but what is that going to look like, and take the time now so that you can position yourself to sort of be on the cutting edge or ahead of that stuff.
And one thing I've been focusing on a lot is just building a better models of how other people, what's going on in other people. The part of me as an entrepreneur, when I feel stress, my coping mechanism is to I've been brainstorming a million different businesses to start. And what was really interesting for me of going to the Facebook group or to talking to people one-on-one is how differently people's reactions are. And I realized a lot of my ideas, it was just too soon. And so listening has helped me improve the quality of ideas that I go after, I'd say.
Really great points, guys. And I'm going to ask you to maybe pivot a little bit to the personal side of things. Many of us, to maintain and keep our busy schedules, the lots of stress that we deal with, the sleep that we get, the diet, exercise. I mean, I know that part of what we've always been talking about on our weekly calls is the importance of getting that exercise and those steps in. Well, right now with our gyms being closed, what are you doing right now in your personal life to keep your mental health strong, and maybe some tips and advice that may help other people listening?
I'd say one, I'm in an accountability. I'm also in an accountability group with two other entrepreneurs who are, it's all health related. So there's accountability and calling each other out if we're not exercising. So having that's been really helpful, because I have a pretty steady gym habit, but once that was gone, I just wasn't consistent. And so having that was helpful. So if you have a gym buddy, normally this could be a time to have a health buddy. And we use a spreadsheet where every day, if we did 0 workout, we give ourselves a 0. A 1 workout is just like 50 push-ups or went on 10,000 steps in a day. And then a 2 is a more intensive workout. So that way, doing that every day just gives accountability to follow through, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say on my end, sort of health-wise and exercise-wise, I've really struggled with that. And so it's still a solution that I'm looking for myself. The one thing that I have done over the last week, which has made a difference, is more so focusing on kind of my mental health. And so each morning, I've been journaling each morning before I start the day, and then calling a friend or two in the morning they're usually asleep, so I just leave them a voicemail. But the journaling has been really effective. And that's one of the things that I've done kind of on and off throughout my entrepreneurial career. But I've put back in now, and that's been really helpful, because as we're talking about, right, there's a lot of emotions that we've experienced the last couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot more new and different circumstances and emotions we're going to feel. And so for me, putting a pen to the paper and journaling, and then making a call or two, just kind of checking in with people in my life that I love and leaving them a message each morning has really helped with my mental well-being.
So I was commenting to one of my friends about my eating habits lately. One of my coping mechanisms has been just eating anything that looks good. I'm trying to support all of these small businesses that have to-go options. So like I'm ordering, way over ordering. And of course, then, one of our coping mechanisms is one of our team members, Matt Stogler, his wife, Jen. Her coping mechanism is baking, and she made us these amazing cookies that are now shaped like the state of Ohio in our office. But I agree with you guys. We're going to get through this. And I think part of what we're trying to spend so much time on is assessing in the new economy the types of businesses and products and services that are going to be so valuable and needed. If we've been pent up and staying in our homes for a few weeks or a few months, when it becomes, when the mandates are removed and when it becomes known to us that might be safer to go outside, people are going to want to get engaged and travel and to experience things again. But, it's going to be different. And I guess maybe we could talk a little bit. Are there any things that you're thinking about or seeing, maybe even with your own families or your own businesses, that might be business opportunities that you think others should be considering or being open to, especially if they need to pivot or innovate or add on new services that may be very much in need?
Well, two things that come off the top of my mind is one is just community. I was recently on a call with someone who trains other people to be community builders. And he was saying that a lot of communities are booming right now because people want to connect with each other still. So, it could be a Facebook group or another way is an opportunity to build a community around your business. And then education. We all have really valuable knowledge that would be helpful to a group of other people. So being able to find that knowledge that's valuable and to teach other people and find the group of people who that would be most valuable to is another step that one could take.
Well, I'll piggyback off that. I mean, I think those are, even some business opportunities that you could do right now, right? The entire pretty much nation is like stuck at home, right? If someone wanted to start a business or some videos on how to deal with staying at home, with kids, with whatever it is, you could actually start that business right now, even before kind of the market turns. And now I got text messages coming in. Sorry there. And I also think, guys, I mean, I look to both of you in this regard as leaders too, and have done really a great job going back to community. I think that's the biggest thing. And, Michael, you've done a tremendous job with, entrepreneurship education over the years, and the mental model club that you're doing now. And Jason, what you're doing with Small Nation, is Small Nation, which is strong, right?
That's right. Thanks.
It is awesome. And so I really appreciate both of you, and also acknowledge both of you for the work that you've done and the work that you're doing right now, because it's super important and very much needed.
I'll share one tip that we have been taking action on, learning more about even just using tools like Zoom. We've taken about everyone in our company and our organization and said, hey, we want you to be a host and learn to interview people. We want you to, be able to try to generate valuable content that's going to help our tenants, our friends, our businesses, our community. So, I think even just getting and changing the mindset of that, but also, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but Yale is offering a free online course right now called The Science of Well-Being. And it's a free course that anyone can register by, going to the Yale website. And in fact, I'll make sure I share the link out on this post after our video. But I had all my team members sign up for that course. Part of it is it is a time right now where we all need to be keeping our mental health strong, but I also want them learning more about online education and the ways that we can deliver content in a meaningful in a way that creates value. And just generally, as I've been working through the course myself, there are video modules that are being taught by an instructor. There is a syllabus. There's some workbooks. And then, at the end of this course, once we complete it, you have the chance to earn a certificate. And, that's something that can enhances your career packet, for and your life. I mean, I think what I'm learning from these skills is now this is a time to retrain the way that I'm thinking about things and keeping my health and my team's health as best as we possibly can.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jason. In my mind, I'm thinking about, as you're talking, I'm thinking in a framework, which is how I often think, but also I love the idea of just number one, listening. But then one thing you said on there is as a way to learn about the education, go take a course. So I love that is if you want to, it's a great time to start using things to go as you're going through the content on the coronavirus. Is there knowledge that you feel like that should be out there that you're not seeing? Or as you're going through an education module, okay, if you were teaching a course, what would it be on? How would you teach it differently than the course you're taking? Or if you're thinking about a community, start joining lots of different communities and notice what's working and what's not. And that usage experience as a user will give you the taste to be able to pivot, and probably the confidence too, because you have a better understanding of it.
Is there anything as you speak to small business owners and entrepreneurs that you think would be really helpful in terms of tools or resources, or maybe different areas that you're getting great advice and feedback right now?
This is more of it's more of a mindset. So I'll hold off on that, on tools.
Yeah, great resource. Yeah, I don't know if I have a kind of specific place or two for great resources. I will say I think it's important to consume information from a lot of different outlets right now, as opposed to maybe just one. And so I don't have one that I say, hey, here's what I love. What I've been doing is taking in info from a lot of different outlets to try to get as well-rounded view as possible.
Yeah, some outlets that I've liked are marginalrevolution.com. It's economist who's Infovore, who's constantly reading. And so he's always posting links and different thoughts. And I agree with Doug on the media. It's been interesting to observe. There's been, of course, the media plays a really important role, but also, let's say 2 months ago, a lot of the media was making fun of light of people, especially in Silicon Valley, who were really ringing the alarm bell on the virus and wasn't saying it's a big thing. And so I try to go beyond the mainstream media as well, and to see people who are individuals who are really ahead of the curve.
The two of you are some of the most well-studied guys that I know in my network. And I think if you added up the number of books that you have read in the past 2 months, that probably totals the number of books I've read in my lifetime. But, what books right now do you think would be really helpful that maybe people would pick up on their reading list while they're at home? And maybe a few kind of points about why those books you think would be especially helpful right now.
Well, 2 books come to mind. One is Can't Hurt Me. It's by retired Navy SEAL David Goggins, and had a really, really big impact on my life. And he kind of grew up, experienced poverty and child abuse, and was about over 300 pounds. And he made a decision one day that he was going to stop making any excuses in his life. And within like 6 or 8 weeks of the deadline, he decided to become a Navy SEAL. And he started exercising 4 hours a day and changed his diet. And he actually lost over 100 pounds in that time period. And when you read that book and to see what he's been through and his philosophy of going through hardship and overcoming it, is just inspiring, and just on a personal level. There's not necessarily any academic frameworks, anything, but on a personal story, it's not much more inspiring than that I've ever read. And then Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. Nassim Taleb, he is someone who's very academic. He started reading like 40 hours a week when he was in 13, and he's done that for the rest of his life. But he also became a trader when he was in his 20s and developed a philosophy for trading, and specifically a philosophy for when there are really large, rare, negative events, how to prepare for them, how to succeed in them. And so during the crash of 1987, he made his FU money, and he's right now, after building his own financial net worth, he started working with and creating thought leadership for governments and to help them protect against rare events like the ones we're speaking about right now. And that book is really, really good.
Awesome. Doug?
Yeah, and those are 2 great books that Michael suggested. And as you see, I got my bookshelf behind me. So as he was talking, I just kind of grabbed a couple of them. I think the first one I'd say is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I think for everyone and anyone right now, it's a must read, because we're all dealing with obstacles, and we all, as we've spoken about, we all react differently to crisis and obstacles. And really the solution is to work through it. And I think with what we're dealing with right now, right, we've all need to sort of stay the course and work through it. So The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday is a fantastic book. And then the other one that I have is Ray Dalio's The Big Debt Crisis. So that's more kind of a financial read. But again, talking about studying history, he goes back centuries studying crashes and panics and things like that. And so for me personally, as I look at, hey, kind of how are we going to come out of this and what is it going to look like again? It's not the first time we've had a pandemic in history. There's a lot of things that have happened before. And so he gives some great background in history as to when those things happen and what was the outcome on the other side of it. So they're 2 great reads.
Awesome. Well, we're getting kind of tight on time here. I'm actually going to turn this over to you guys. Are there any themes or questions that you think that we maybe want to just kind of wrap up or close up to share with the folks that are watching today?
Yeah, there's one thing a mentor, or 2 things. One is from a mentor and others from another entrepreneur. One thing the mentor said is that when we go through really emotional times, our memory gets really, really high. So we're going to remember the moments that we're experiencing right now for the rest of our life. And more importantly, we'll remember how we acted. And so a lot of our identity or kind of self-signaling will come from how we act and the leadership we take in difficult times. We'll be talking about it with our kids and other people that we teach. And 2, our customers will remember this. These moments, these months will be part of the defining of our relationship with them. So it's an opportunity to really go above and beyond with a service mindset. And then the second thing is there was an entrepreneur I was listening to. He was a very successful entrepreneur, but was going through, does live events, in-person events. So he's going through a difficult time. He's also away from his family. He can't get back to where his family is. So he's by himself during this period. And first it was really difficult, but he was saying, he set a frame for his life that he's going to have the best he's ever been across each dimension of his life that he can have. So he wants to be the best health he's ever been, the best relationships with different people, being the most learned during this period. And so I love that frame of where is this an opportunity to be the best we've ever been?
Awesome. Doug?
Yeah, I would say it's simple, but for me, it's powerful, is just being grateful, gratitude in terms of, yes, right, there's a lot of things going on right now, and we all have a lot that, you know, we can be grateful for. So if you are healthy, right, especially right now, be very grateful that we're healthy. I think for me personally, on a personal note, you know, one of the things is each morning I leave the house before my 3-year-old daughter wakes up. And so working from home now every morning, you know, I love, she comes back into the office, and when she gets up and she comes, gives me a hug and a kiss. And that's something that I'm really appreciative and grateful for. And if it wasn't for life circumstances right now, that wouldn't be happening. So I think also taking the keys and the things that you can be grateful for, and presencing yourself to that on a daily basis is, I think, very important right now.
I can tell you one thing, guys. I am very thankful and the gratitude to have each of you here today sharing and just being so authentic about, you know, this is a time that a lot of people are hurting and they're looking for people to lead. And I know for you and for everything that's going on in your families and your life, to dedicate this time, it means a lot to me. And thank you for being there. Here's what I'd like to ask is that, you know, I'd like to maybe at some point in the future continue to jump on the video with you just to hear what's happening in your towns and your businesses and your community. Is that something that you think we might be able to do in the future?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.
That'd be pretty bad if we said no right now.
Yeah, actually, way to end I wasn't going to let that happen. So, well, thank you guys again for joining today, and be safe out there.
All right. Take care, everyone.